The story takes place more than a decade after the Civil War. Matthias Breacher is a former Union Army soldier who now works as a Pinkerton detective in the years following the American Civil War. One of the first African-American U.S. senators, Senator Benjamin Burke, secretly hires Matthias Breacher to locate these former Confederate war criminals and bring justice where the legal system has failed. This was Breacher's 18th assignment. Just 2 more jobs, and his contract with the government would be fulfilled. He would collect a sizable sum of money, retire with clean hands, and finally taste the peaceful life he had deferred for so long. After days of meticulous tracking and quiet inquiries, Breacher finally located his next mark, former Confederate officer Reginald Cooke. As he approached the modest homestead, he saw a young woman stood in front of a farmhouse, a rifle raised, aimed at some horseman. Breacher paused, listening. But before he could understand the situation, the men soon mounted up and rode off. Then the girl turned the rifle toward him. Breacher raised his hand slowly, offering a calm, patient explanation. "I have no part with those men who just left." The girl's name was Sarah Cooke, and she was Reginald Cooke's daughter, though her father was the very target he had come for. Breacher spun a necessary lie to disarm her. "I'm an old friend of your father's." Hearing this, the tension left the girl's shoulders, and she slowly lowered the rifle.
"You came to say goodbye?"
Bye.
You don't know.
Know what, man?
Expecting another ruthless criminal, Breacher instead discovers an elderly man dying of pneumonia, lovingly cared for by his daughter, Sarah. Looking down at the dying old man, the innate decency that Breacher had spent years suppressing flared to the surface. He found himself utterly unable to state his grim purpose to a family already broken by grief. Yet, duty demanded a confrontation. Hesitating for a long moment, Breacher finally drew the badge from his pocket and showed it to Reginald. Reginald, upon seeing the badge, showed no fear, only relief. He had served under the very general Breacher had executed days prior, carrying out countless atrocities in the shadows of the war. He had lived with guilt for years, haunted by the shadows of his wartime deeds. Now, plagued by terminal illness and fearing he was nothing but a burden to his daughter. Death did not look like a punishment, it looked like absolution. His only plea, not to be hanged beneath the jujube tree outside, where his wife lay buried. He did not want her to witness his body hanging above her grave. Breacher stood in heavy silence, his kinder nature warring with duty. He could not bring himself to string up a dying man who had spent his remaining years in genuine, agonizing repentance. Then, quietly, he made his decision.
I will not hang you. I will not shoot you. I will let you pass as God sees fit. But I will stay here, for it is my job to watch men like you take their last breath. That is the burden I must carry in this life.
And so he stayed at the ranch. The daughter, Sarah, unaware of his true purpose, welcomed him warmly as her father's old comrade. She prepared a comfortable bed for him, cooked a hearty meal, and even dressed up for supper. Her laughter filling the small space as they shared stories by lamplight. Breacher, who had come to claim a life, felt a deepening shame. He wanted to confess everything, but the words died on his lips. For the first time in years, the drifting lawman found himself unwilling to shatter the fragile warmth around him. The days flowed by, silent and serene. Sarah's affection grew for the thoughtful, witty man who had entered their lives. During this period he helps repair the ranch, protects Sarah from hostile neighbors, and experiences something he has long been denied, a sense of peace in family. From his sickbed, Reginald watched it all, a quiet contentment settling over his final days. One afternoon, Breacher spotted figures on a distant ridge, watching the homestead. Pressed by Breacher, the truth came out. Fred Quaid, a powerful local rancher, had been trying to buy their land for pennies on the dollar. With Reginald ill and bedridden, the pressure had escalated into open intimidation. The riders Breacher had spotted earlier were Fred and his enforcers. "If the day comes when I go to meet the Almighty," Reginald pleaded, "I beg you to look after my daughter. Don't leave her to face this cruel world alone and helpless." Breacher did not answer. He stood up and left the house. The next morning, he checked his guns, told Sarah he was going to town for supplies, and rode hard for Fred's ranch. He intended to iron things out through peaceful negotiation. But the moment Breacher rode into the compound, before he could even speak, Fred's men raised their rifles, their eyes mocking. Fred strolled out of the house, confident, dismissive.
"You can get yourself shot riding onto a man's ranch, stranger."
Breacher, still on horseback, asked him to stop targeting Sarah's land. He even offered the modest savings he had accumulated, everything he had to his name, and offered it as a peace offering. Fred looked at the money and let out a disdainful laugh.
I don't need money, but I need that land.
He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a harsh threat. Stay out of it, or you'll regret it. Breacher's expression didn't change. He kept his eyes locked on the tyrant. Fred, realizing this was no ordinary drifter who could be easily spooked by a few harsh words, proposed a challenge. To settle the dispute by means of a brutal fistfight. If Breacher won, the land dispute would end, Sarah's land would be spared. Breacher glanced at the two men standing nearest, one was slight and wiry, the other an older man with graying hair. Assessing the odds, Breacher nodded, agreeing to the duel. But the trap had already been sprung. The door creaked open, and a towering, muscular brute of a man strode out. For a fleeting second, a pang of regret hit Breacher. But he thought of Sarah waiting for him in the cabin, summoned his courage, and began the duel. The fight was brutal and lopsided. Breacher was quickly overwhelmed by the brute's sheer size and strength. Heavy blows rained down, leaving Breacher battered, bloodied, and broken against the dirt. Pride swelled in his opponent until Breacher seized an opening. Drawing on his remaining strength, Breacher lunged forward, throwing his weight into a desperate, ferocious assault. In the end, he relied on his quick wits and sheer grit to win the lopsided duel. Fred, seething, honored the bet grudgingly and ordered Breacher off his property.
Get off my land.
Covered in wounds, Breacher ignored the searing pain and galloped toward the Cooke ranch. The moment he arrived, he found Sarah and broke the news.
That man Quaid won't be bothering you anymore.
Looking at the scars on his neck and hands, Sarah's eyes filled with heartache. Breacher's complete disregard for his own safety to settle the dispute for her completely won her heart. Not only did Sarah prepare a warm bath for him, but she also walked right in while he was bathing, without any hesitation, to apply medicine to his wounds. The distance between them collapsed quietly, without announcement, as if it had always been inevitable. It was at that very moment that the dishonest Fred, accompanied by several of his men, quietly approached the Cooke ranch. Inside, Breacher was completely unaware of the danger outside. He was preparing to share an intimate moment with the girl he loved, his attention entirely consumed by her presence, his guard lowered to nothing. Only the old horse, his loyal companion of many years, sensed it first. It reared back and let out a sharp, urgent neigh. In an instant, Breacher realized something was wrong. Years of honed frontier instincts overrode the romance in his chest. In a heartbeat, he transformed from the unsuspecting quarry into a calculating hunter waiting for his opening. And when the moment came, he struck first. Quickly, he freed the horse, slapping its flank to send it bolting. As the men's attention snapped toward the fleeing animal, Breacher burst into the open, his revolver spitting lead. Fred's crew was so busy dodging his bullets that they completely lost sight of the cabin. Hidden inside the cabin until that moment, Sarah rushed out and fired without hesitation. In moments, 3 of Fred's men lay dead. Only the crafty Fred managed to survive the initial onslaught, scrambling for cover behind the fence. Gunfire traded back and forth, but neither could land a decisive hit. The battle settled into a tense stalemate, each waiting for the other's mistake. Then, Sarah's deathly ill father dragged himself from his sickbed. With shaking determination, he joined the fight. Realizing the tide had turned irrevocably against him, the cornered Fred broke cover for a final, cowardly gambit. Reginald is fatally shot while helping defend his home, and Breacher ultimately kills Fred. Breacher watched in anguished fury, completely consumed by a wave of grief and self-blame. In his mind, Fred had originally only intended to seize the girl's few acres of land through cheap, dishonest means. It was Breacher's intervention, his attempt to play the hero, that had provoked everything. And now, because of him, Sarah's father lay dead. Afterwards, he personally builds Reginald's coffin and assists Sarah in burying her father. And when Sarah knelt by the grave, crying uncontrollably, Breacher rose quietly and left. Heart heavy with remorse, he approached his horse, drew out the final warrant from his pocket, and glanced back towards Sarah. One word from her, just one, and he would toss the warrant into the wind, abandon his contract, and spend the rest of his days safeguarding her life. But she only looked at him in silence. Breacher mounted and rode away hard, no longer the cold government executioner but a man burdened by deep longing and regret.